So the USDA is planning to airdrop vaccines into 6 states. Excuse me, what? Yeah. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is planning to airdrop rabies vaccines into 6 states over the course of the month, continuing a process that started in August this year in other states. They're going to be doing this in Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. They're all going to be receiving these vaccines. Okay, so these are rabies vaccines. They are planning on airdropping them across these states, these little like edible satchels of food. And they're going to be airdropping these little edible satchels of food that are going to attract wildlife because apparently there's a rabies epidemic in the wildlife. And they're going to drop these little satchels that are going to that contain an oral rabies vaccine. And when the animals eat it, they are now vaccinated against rabies, all against, their consent. Of course, we always vaccinate animals against their consent. They can't consent, right? But the big question about this is then, okay, what's next, right? So if they're going to be putting these satchels and they're spreading them all around and they say, yes, it's fine for your cats and dogs. If your cats and dogs end up getting one of these satchels, it should be okay for them. It's not going to harm them. They're just going to end up being vaccinated against the rabies. Again, probably you've already vaccinated your animals against rabies. So they're saying, no, it's all fine. It's all good, right? But this is how it begins, right? I mean, this is how it begins, is that they are going to start with the animals, just like they always start with the children who can't consent. They start with the animals and they say, well, we must, because there's a big rabies epidemic going on. And then people say, okay, yeah, we don't want wild animals biting our dogs, getting into our backyard and biting our animals, our dogs, when they fight them. And then our dog ends up with rabies, although you probably have already vaccinated your dog against rabies. But certainly you don't want a bunch of rabid animals running around. I understand that. But this is the reasoning. I mean, this is what they will use when they decide to airdrop vaccines to the human population. They've already started to do this. But let's go ahead and just kind of finish this story here. I didn't think it could happen to me, but just recently someone stole my information and actually bought a car under my name in Texas. While I was standing in the Idaho DMV getting my new driver's license, a thief was driving off the dealer lot pretending to be me. And I only caught it because I was getting bombarded with alerts. Now imagine if I hadn't seen them in time. And this is exactly why today's sponsor, Aura, matters. If you've ever wondered how scammers get your personal info, your phone number, your address, even where you supposedly work, it's because of data brokers. These shady companies collect your data and sell it to anyone, from marketers to scammers, and they make billions doing it. They don't ask your permission. And while they're legally required to remove your info if you ask, they make the process nearly impossible on purpose. Believe me, I'm going through it right now. But if I had Aura set up before, this thief would have had a much harder time. Aura automatically scans and scrubs your information from those data broker sites, and then it keeps it off. It also gives you real-time fraud alerts, so instead of finding out a day later that someone used your name, you get notified right away. That's the kind of tool I wish I had in place when all of this happened. But Aura is more than just removing your data from shady brokers. It's an all-in-one digital security app. It alerts you if your personal info is found on the dark web. It monitors your credit and bank accounts in real time. It gives you a secure VPN, password manager, antivirus, and more. And if something does happen, Aura covers you with up to $5 million in identity theft insurance and 24/7 US-based fraud support. The fact that companies profit off of our stolen data while we're left vulnerable is outrageous. I learned that the hard way. But I'm not leaving myself unprotected anymore, and you shouldn't either. Protect yourself and your family with Aura. Try it free for 14 days at aura.com/Kim Iverson. And in just 2 weeks, Aura will show you where your personal data is being exposed and start scrubbing it off the internet automatically. Again, that's aura.com/Kim Iverson. They're saying that they're going to be dropping these in Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia. They're going to be receiving the vaccines. The USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service distributes rabies vaccines as part of a nationwide effort to stop the spread of rabies amongst various animals to protect public and animal health. Rabies is a viral disease that can be deadly to humans, affecting the nervous system and leading to severe brain disease if they don't receive medical care before symptoms start. It is spread to people and pets through bites and scratches of an infected animal, and first symptoms may include flu, weakness, discomfort, fever, headache, as well as a prickling sensation at the side of the wound before turning into more severe disease after around 2 weeks. Animals that typically carry rabies are bats, raccoons, skunks, and foxes. Nearly 3 in 4 Americans live in a community where animals carry rabies, and contact with infected bats is the leading cause of rabies deaths in the U.S. Who the hell is hanging out with bats? I mean, I lived in Austin, Texas, which is like Bat City. The bats are all under the bridge. And then every night the bats fly out from under the bridge. But I'm telling you, we never saw bats close up. And we lived in the city of bats. So who's around these bats to where they're actually being infected with rabies? That's kind of mind-boggling. But anyway, they're saying that they're going to be distributing hundreds of thousands of oral rabies vaccines as bait coated in a fish meal attractant and packaged in 2-inch plastic sachets with the aim of preventing the spread of raccoon rabies to Americans and their pets. The vaccines will be distributed across rural areas by airplane and in suburban and urban areas by helicopter and vehicle across Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. The baits are safe for many animals, including domestic dogs and cats, but while humans and pets cannot get rabies from contact with the bait, it is advised that they should leave them undisturbed. If dogs consume a number of baits, they may experience a temporary upset stomach, but the USDA said there's no long-term risk to the animals. For people, it is advised that if they come into contact with the baits, they immediately wash the contact area with warm water and soap. If Americans find a bait in an area where a raccoon is unlikely to go, such as their own lawn or driveway, I don't know, isn't that where raccoons go? Aren't they like rummaging through your garbage? They may move them to an area with thicker cover, so as long as they wear gloves or use a towel to pick it up and move the bait. Okay. What people are saying, Emily Herring, North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, public health veterinarian, said in a statement, the best way to prevent rabies is to avoid contact with wild animals and ensure pets are vaccinated against rabies. Though this annual oral rabies vaccine distribution and the vigilance of pet owners, through this, we can work to prevent the spread of this deadly disease. Remember that phrase, because that is what they're going to use on us when they decide that they're going to be vaccinating us with mosquitoes, through mosquitoes, using mosquitoes. That is what's been planned by lovely Bill Gates. He's been working on funding research into innovative methods for vaccinating people, essentially, for they of course frame it always much nicer. We're protecting people from mosquito-borne diseases like malaria and dengue fever. When in reality, what they're doing is they're trying to modify the mosquitoes to essentially vaccinate people against malaria and dengue fever using the mosquitoes. And they've been working on this research. How can we use mosquitoes to vaccinate people? And then they say, it's going to save lives. So many lives are going to be saved if we can vaccinate people using mosquitoes against malaria and dengue fever. I mean, this is what they're going to say. And you know how many people are going to say this is a good idea? I mean, we saw what happened during the pandemic. So many people sat there and said, oh, yeah, we got to lock down. Yep, you got to stay away from grandma while she dies because you might kill her. That didn't make any sense. I mean, just imagine how stupid that whole thing was. Let grandma die alone because if we go near grandma, we might kill grandma. Well, grandma's dying. Yeah, but we don't want to kill her again. We don't want to make her dead. She's just going to be dead and alone while she's dying. Just horrific. Absolutely horrific. But people are that stupid. So what we learned during the pandemic is people will go along with whatever they're told. And all we need is another pandemic, another fear. Oh no, this time it's going after the kids. Last time it was grandma, and they realized, people didn't care about grandma that much. People cared about grandma, but it was still, people were not willing to sacrifice the livelihood of their children so that grandma, who's already in hospice care, could survive a week or two longer. People were not really willing to do that. So the next pandemic, what they're going to do is say, oh no, this affects the young people. And then that'll get people really afraid. And then they'll say, look, we've got these innovative, we had a lot of people failed to comply during the last pandemic. That's what they failed to comply. And you know what? COVID continued because they failed to comply, even though that's totally not true. They're still going to sell it like that, and plenty of people will buy that. Plenty of people still today believe that the pandemic lasted as long as it did because many people failed to take the vaccine. And then you point out, but the vaccine doesn't stop the spread. And they say, well, maybe it would have if everybody would have taken it. I shouldn't laugh because it's not funny, but this is how people think. And these are the things they say. So you know that these same people who said, well, there was a failure to comply last time, they're going to be the people that say, drop the satchels of vaccines all across. Just dump it in the water. Send out the flying mosquitoes. Vaccinate everybody. And they're going to say, this is a brilliant idea. This will reduce the lack of compliance. You have to treat people like raccoons. You just have to do that. And you just have to vaccinate them without their consent. Spread the vaccine in the water. Throw it throughout the air. Do whatever you got to do. But vaccinate everybody so that people comply without having to comply. And then we can end the pandemic, even though none of it will work. But that is where this type of thing leads. I mean, this is why it's frightening that they're wanting to airdrop vaccines, because whatever they do to the animals, then they do the kids, and whatever they do to the kids, they end up doing to all of us. So we got to keep our eye out on this with the little sneaky tactics that they're doing, all in the name of your health and safety. Always, usually and always. I would like to know what they did about the rabies vaccine prior to their innovative ability to spread it around. What happened? Is rabies a function of Mother Nature? Might be. It might be that rabies will sweep through a population and help control it. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to play Mother Nature, and I don't know if science should either, but let me know what you think. Comment down below or email me, kim@kimiverson.com. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.